It's 5 o'clock somewhere, time for the Security Cocktail Hour. I'm Joe, representing North Jersey.
And I'm Adam, representing Staten Island.
All right. How's Staten Island doing today? You got any wildlife out there?
We have some wild rain, but no wildlife.
Wild rain?
We did have
That's not too exciting.
a turkey talk walking down the street the other day. He was pretty much owning the street.
Yeah, well, he probably figures he's safe for a few months.
Well, I thought he was a threat actor.
What was that thing, whether you have some equipment strapped to him? You think he was like trying to scan your neighborhood or something?
I don't know. Turkeys can be very devious. They can carry a wide variety of equipment. You'll never know. They're pretty big.
Well, we got the rubber ducky. Maybe it was like the iron turkey or something. Who knows?
It's quite possible.
Okay. Getting down to it. Today we're talking about passwords. And, it's kind of funny because just this morning, I didn't even tell you this, I got an email that said, this is your password reset email from one of my accounts. And it ends up, I did not request it unless I was drinking last night and even drinking so much that I don't even remember drinking. I did not request a password reset for this account. So that very apropos, as we say. So I went into the account that this thing was for, and I logged in. So, with my regular password, so I'm like, okay, well, it means it didn't get compromised. And then I said, okay, so what do you got to do? We got to be good professionals. Stay with best practices. So I changed the password anyway. And I was not so worried about my email account because obviously, I guess that simple password reset thing didn't work. But this is a teachable moment. This illustrates a few things. First of all, that people will try to break into your account, and you better have something besides a password protecting it. I consider that weak. They got part of the way there. Also, kind of important to keep your email account secure or whatever else you're, using as your backup for passwords.
I think in a perfect world, it'd be nice that only the password resets can come from. And I know our IP addresses are dynamic and they're not static. But it would be nice if you can only do password resets based on a certain geographical area, maybe. So, for example, if I'm in Staten Island, somebody can't reset my password unless they're in Staten Island, possibly, or within New York City. I mean, the sheer fact that somebody from another country, maybe India or Russia or China, is resetting my password is not a good thing. I usually find that, threat actors don't usually reside in the same borough or the same city as you, but it is always possible, right? But it does mitigate the risk.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it was a pretty unsophisticated attack. And, they could. And I think hopefully, the sites also have some kind of risk, quantification or whatever, giving things a score to say, hey, this looks dodgy. Accept it, don't accept it. I don't know. That's part of the problem. It's impossible to know what they're doing or what they're not doing. And another key thing was I was not worried about the email getting broken into because I worried about that. Except I do have 2FA on that email account. That's important. We'll talk about that later probably. But it's if you're going to have something like password resets by email account, which just about everyone does, you got to make sure you got 2FA on those or a hardware token, or you are going to be in a world of hurt.
I think it's very similar to the people that call me almost every day that my student loan requires support. And when I really piss them off and I say things I shouldn't be saying, they lock out my account. So anybody can lock out your account 3-5 attempts. If they know the URL and they know your username and password, and they most likely have gotten it from one of those compromised lists. So they figure they can try, engaging you. If you're part of a list, you're going to get calls. If you're part of a list, you're going to get emails. How do you get off that list?
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if they used an old password too, if that did come from a compromise. You see, that is part of the problem, that you don't have visibility into the stuff. You can't find out. There's no way to call them and say, hey, let's do a little analysis here. Like, good luck. Even in the professional world, in corporate, it's like, good luck. They'll just say, hey, did you get broken into? No. Good. Go away. Don't worry.
So that's funny, right? They have like Tinder and all those other websites. Maybe we can do like meetthehacker.com, and then you can get matched up with your hacker and you can ask them questions and see if you're a good match.
Yeah, there you go. Except then people start scamming that, you know. In fact, when I got the password reset email, I mean, I checked it out really, really carefully because I'm just like, you know, I figured that that could be phishing too. That could be the attack right there. Could have been phony. Who the hell knows?
Oh man, the threat actors today, they're very sophisticated, but hacking as a service, compromising as a service. There's so many different products out there you can probably log into and get access to, and just be a kind of like a script kiddie in a way, and just you could probably even go onto the site and pick a list. Which list you want to use? Oh, 2 cents per username, and you just spam everybody. You don't even have to provide the list anymore. I mean, I haven't gone on one of those sites, but I would imagine you can even. It's like a one-stop shop, right? Who do you want to scam? How much do you want to pay? And then you have to probably pay back. I think you have to pay, a certain percentage back to the people hosting the site. And you could probably use PayPal or Zelle or something else. I wouldn't be surprised.
No, I got to use like Bitcoin. That's like, you know, what all the cool criminals use.
It's
I
so
mean, I don't
commercial
think you
these
get any
days.
credit if you use like PayPal unless you're using a stolen PayPal account. That give you some respect.
It's
I
it's
don't
it's
know.
it's so mainstream today. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I don't want to sit there and slander PayPal because I'm not saying they do it on purpose, but I'm saying that there's so many threat actors out there. They probably create an account or a Zelle and say, "Send me the money." How would PayPal know? How would Zelle know?
Well, they got some ways of looking at things. I mean, they got things that they check. They do their due diligence. And they do have systems that are kind of behavioral. That they might even have machine learning and AI. That's so exciting. But at the end of the day, for everything, here's lesson one. For every countermeasure, there is a way around it. They find a way to attack everything, and none of them are 100%. The days of us being able to say, "Hey, we blocked this." It's like, well, you didn't typically now. You didn't block it completely, and even if you did, there are 500 other ways into something.
So I
That's what the
think
bad guys do.
I think what you're saying is I should set up a module with ChatGPT to answer these scammers, and then kind of weed them out and see whether or not my emails and my texts and my different forms of communication are legitimate. I mean, ChatGPT should be able to handle that, right?
Oh yeah, I can do anything. In fact, they're probably using Chat GPT too, so you'll just like have it talking to each other.
It'll be like a round robin conversation. Well, I'm talking to myself. Did you know that?
Yeah, but that's a whole other discussion. The Chat GPT and how to trick it into doing bad things, which is pretty easy. But we're here to talk about passwords today,
Yes, we
and
are.
I guess a few minutes into this, we already got passwords just suck. I mean, they're terrible. I mean, I have gone for a long time under the assumption that if you have a password, it doesn't matter how well you try to protect it. You can do a lot of things, and the thinking has changed on what a good password is lately. Years ago, it used to be, it's like, oh, you need a long, complex password with all these different characters, mix your case, and all that nonsense. Which was definitely better than using like, sex and love as your password or whatever. But a couple of years ago, it changed, and this changed, and they said, no, now we got to do different things. Now, password complexity is important. Make your passwords long. Don't change them unless you know they're compromised. No more of the 60, 90-day rotation, whatever. So they changed all these rules. Now there's the new thinking on passwords. And you know what? It doesn't matter. If you got passwords, they will get compromised. They will get stolen.
Well, I mean,
It seems inevitable.
it does seem inevitable, but there's two different theories of thought of how that password's going to get compromised, right? It's either going to be one, a dictionary attack, and that can really well, actually three ways: one, a dictionary attack; two, you've been socially engineered into giving your password; or three, somebody really wants you, and they're not phishing, they're not even spear phishing, they're whaling, and they're going after you, and they're going to try to find a way to get your password, and they might even try to use some cloud based password brute force cracker, or try to get some of your information, or get your tables, and or extract your password data and try to see if they can crack it off-site. So this way they can utilize multiple CPUs.
Well, I don't know. Is password cracking even a thing anymore? Because it seems like bad guys, they just started stealing them. They're just like, let's steal it. Let's find a way. They go and like something gets cracked. There's some big compromise, and they put that on the dark web and sell it. And sometimes they're hashes, but sometimes they can be more wrong passwords. And they put it out
Well,
there and sell
yeah.
it. And then you got to hope that if you get in one of those, which we all have, and you have whether you know it or not, that you're not using that password everywhere, which is a whole other thing.
Or
But
right, it depends on the use case.
but at the same time, that's what a lot of phishing is about stealing passwords or just tricking someone to log in for you, right?
Well, it depends, right? Is it somebody just looking to make some extra bucks, and they're doing a wide net, and they're just sending emails and hoping that you do it and maybe get ransomware and get your passwords to get that data? Or is it, a targeted attack of a nation by a nation state or a criminal threat actor who wants to get access to merger and acquisition data or, financial data that's going to help them make more money in the end? And if they are at that level, they're probably they have a big budget to accomplish their task, because the greater payout is getting that merger and acquisition data, getting that financial data, or they've been paid by somebody who's competing against them. So it really depends.
Well, you kind of got both. I mean, you got the stuff that casts the wide net, just the commodity phishing, whatever, where they're going out trying to steal passwords so they can get into something, try to steal credentials so they get in, and and then they take what they got and post it on the dark web, try to sell it, find a buyer, whatever, and that stuff is pretty cheap. But then you do have the higher end stuff where it's really targeted, and the stuff has gotten, you and I have even seen it ridiculously targeted. And
oh yeah,
they'll just go to a company's public website or on LinkedIn, whatever, get some information and say, hey, here's someone who might be interesting. Here's some of the people they work with. And now also with, I think one of the scariest things with ChatGPT is that when it comes to, it can write phishing emails, and believe me, I've seen it done. It's easy to get it to write a phishing email, even though they say it won't write a phishing email. It's easy to get it to do it. You just say, write an email to this person from this person about this, and it works. And the scary thing is that it does it in like perfect English. You can't even tell it's not a native speaker anymore. That's really nasty.
So I look at it this way, right? We're talking about user passwords and user accounts, but what if it's an IoT device? What if it's a camera, a surveillance camera sitting in an office, and you have access to it through another portal, but then people are using the default password and username, and then you get into that camera from another site, and then you traverse onto the rest of the network and exploring. And then most of these cameras are kind of Linux, right? And then you're using the tools built into that small Linux deviation to try to hack and crack other passwords and usernames on the network. So if you're really good and you can get access to one of these IoTs or these high-lows or something that has Linux tools built into it, you're living off the land, and that's a fun thing to do.
Oh yeah, well, that's a scary thing. I don't think a lot of people realize it's like, a lot of people go to password managers because it's kind of funny to explain it. And I think a lot of people who aren't in the business don't realize it. But, it's like, okay, you got your personal stuff. And, years ago, you used to have a stack of Post-its, and then you went to a little notebook with everything. Now you're using a password manager. You're proud of yourself, and you got, a couple hundred passwords or whatever. It's like the corporations, it's like, yes, they have things that's called privileged access management, where it's basically like a big pass for the most part. And, it's professional grade. It does all sorts of things to keep them safe. But there are still thousands of passwords. Everything has multiple passwords on it. And keeping track of all those, just to manage it. Security is often not about all this whiz bang stuff. It's just about managing and keeping track of stuff. Even a small organization has thousands of credentials. And unfortunately, people get lazy or policies have gaps in them. And, it ends up they are reusing passwords. And maybe the policy isn't being set everywhere because, we can say, oh, we have this iron policy that says, you got to you got to change the password when something's new and you need to do all this and it's got to be a certain strength and you got to follow these rules. That's a piece of paper. And, people really underestimate the difficulty of enforcing that. It's easy when you got the stuff that the privileged access management system supports, when it's Windows, even when it's Linux, when it's firewalls and this and that. Those things all work with it. But the IoT device is the Internet of Things. The camera, the wacky thing, or the other thing that someone goes and buys, or they say they need the eating sensor, the crap like that. That's like, who knows if it's built with it, especially if you're in a smaller industry. When it comes to software, it's like they don't integrate big enterprise stuff. Big problem. That causes a lot of headaches.
So you're going to get me on a rant, right? So the whole
please,
issue,
that's what this is all about.
So some people, they get very upset when you use password managers. What happens if the password manager gets compromised? But you can't, even if you use your same username and password on every site, how do you manage those IoT devices in an enterprise organization, especially globally? And what the issue really is that if you use a password manager, you have to be careful. If you have multiple passwords and usernames not in a password manager, you have to be careful. If you store it locally and somebody compromises your machine, they have all your passwords. If you use it in the cloud, somebody is able to find a vulnerability to compromise those passwords and usernames, you're screwed. I guess the good news is if you use a password manager and you get compromised, you might be able to move to a new password manager because a lot of them allow you to export to other password managers. But here's where it gets really complicated. If you work in an enterprise organization and you need to reset your password, it's usually self-help, especially a global organization. So if a threat actor gets access to your machine, they're going to use their self-help to reset the password and most likely be able to change that password. Now, lastly, what about the Macs? I know you love Macs, but Macs are not enterprise machines. And when you want to manage a Mac and you want to use it in a Windows environment, it's not easy, especially when you have all these different tablets and phones. And when you have phones, you have to use an MDM, and then you have to manage the software separately, and the passwords are managed separately, and then you have to integrate it. We can sit here all day long talking about the complexities of this. Now, one last thing before we go on. What happens when you hire that company to come in and do that pen test and they search every single machine and share and they find that password put on a notepad on the desktop, which they will always find? What do we do then?
Okay, that was a good rant. You are a ray of sunshine.
Thank you. You're welcome.
That's why we say you might need a drink for this. Well, here's the thing. You ranted. Now I'm going to pontificate. Basically, and I even tell my kids this with everything. What you got to do is you got to do the best you can, basically. And believe me, you can do a bad job and make things trivial, but whenever it comes to security things, but especially passwords, you got to do the best you can. You got to use a good password manager, whether it's yourself personally and use something like LastPass or Bitword or whatever the hell you use. It doesn't matter. You got to use it, learn to use it correctly. Or if you're doing, enterprise stuff, whether you got CyberArk or whatever the hell the other ones are, using that, you got to do the best you can. You got to use it correctly, but recognize that it's not perfect. It's all still software, or even if you're using hardware-based stuff, which is a whole other discussion, it's going to have vulnerabilities. It's going to have, difficulties. People are going to use it wrong. You're going to make mistakes configuring it. One of the problems in security is that the stuff is too damn complicated, even for experts. There are going to be issues, and it doesn't matter if it's on premise or in the cloud or where it is. You're going to have vulnerabilities. You're going to have mistakes. You're going to have things that don't support it, where you just can't do it, or you got to kludge it or hack it or whatever to get something working. And so you got all that to deal with, and then you got the human nature where as long as you got passwords, people will write them down. People will find a way to copy, paste them, write it down. It is truly, we've spent, years and many tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars building systems to protect these things. And it is actually astonishing the lengths people will go to get around them and write down a password and put it where someone can get it.
Well, let's be honest, right? You don't have to write it down to get it, right? And I'm not talking about using telepathy. A good social engineer can really create that sense of urgency and find somebody who's going to give a password to give you access. And that's where multi-factor authentication comes in, right? Though, here's again where the other issue is, right? That great threat actor, that great social engineer calls up and says, I work for this person. I need you to do this right away. And by the way, when we do the password reset, you're going to get a pop-up that you need to accept in order for us to continue our conversation. People are really good. If you are an expert at your trade, you can get somebody to not only give you the password, but probably end up getting you a meal delivered to your house, part of, Seamless or something like that. This is how good people are today, right?
Yeah, well, that's it. Multi-factor is better and stronger, and you should be using it everywhere you can. But it's funny. Just when we thought we had found the invincible solution to this, the bad guys, they are incredibly clever people. The way they figured out how to get around it. You've got phishing attacks, phishing sites that will steal it, and they've got it automated. Or like it goes, they grab your password, they grab your short use token or whatever, a time limited thing, the code, and it'll instantly go in and use it and log in. It is just out of hand. The length, and like you say, the social engineering and all that SIM swapping stuff. Please don't use texting for your second factor anymore. Don't do that. Use the app on your cell phone or whatever to give up on that stuff.
Do you recall when we were dealing with a purple team issue where somebody went in to a certain site and changed the SMS texting to a number they owned in order to get access? So that's the issue with SMS, right? If you have access to the portal, you can change the phone. And what we have also seen is people that do these incident response, purple team engagements, they sometimes bring their own foreign phones, and certain websites can't accommodate these foreign phones in the correct way, and allows them to get a little bit more access than they should. So it's really amazing. If you have text messaging and that's your method of authentication, well, I don't necessarily think it's a good thing at all. You might as well almost not have it. But
it's not, and that's
I
was going to say it's not, and that's been out of style for a long time. That's been a recommendation.
Oh, of course,
it's still promoted.
It's still around.
It's still promoted. Yeah, it's still around because it's easy and everyone can use it. But I'm here to tell all of you, don't do it. Don't check the SMS option, and that brings up another thing, which is if you give people options on options for anything, but particularly like with multi-factor, if you can say, so you can get your second thing, you can use the app on your phone, or you can use SMS, or you can use email or something, people will pick the worst one because it's the easiest. Do not give people choices, and please don't pick the easy one. I mean, do you remember? I don't know if we were still working together, but do you remember when I made a big deal when we were putting in this big system? I'm like, we gotta have two-factor. We absolutely gotta have this. I'm gonna have a heart attack every night if we don't have two-factor. So one of the compromises that you make, because you always have compromises, is we got to give people a choice. And it ends up one of the choices was one that I guess I didn't think about it enough. Was you can have, instead, besides text, besides the app, you can have the system call the person, make a phone call.
Oh, yeah.
And the AI or whatever will give them the code. And it ended up, I thought to myself, who the hell is going to use this? That's ridiculous. It was ridiculous. ridiculously popular.
Of
And for the
course.
life of me, I'm like, why in the world would anyone want that? To me, it wasn't just not secure; it was just bizarre.
So here, check out this, right? If you send somebody an email and you say click this link and they click it, you can force them to forward their phone calls to you or to them. So you don't even have to come up with some crazy thing. All you need to do is get somebody to click a link that will change their call forwarding to another number, and they no longer get the calls. It's really a great idea I mean, it's a simple attack. It's not complicated. And I've seen other things done where people turn around and do a man in the middle of attack with these phone calls. So basically what you do is you send somebody a link and you tell them it's whatever it is, it's a bank, and they click it. And when you call in, they're using maybe asterisk that, PBX open source. And at the same time you're calling in, it initiates a call to your bank. It's grabbing all your PIN and information. And now they have access to everything. So why not set it up? Say, hey, this is our firm. It calls the number. You put the information in, and then you get their information by simulating a conversation between you and your organization. Pretty cool.
Yeah, crazy. And the crazy thing too to keep in mind is that we talk about some of these things. Adam likes to impress people saying, "Well, I could do this, or I could figure this out, and I could do this." The funny thing though is that a lot of these things, in fact, most of these things, they're not theoretical, and they're not just being done, and there's not just some bad guy doing it. The bad guys, they're doing this on an industrial scale that I think a lot of non-security, maybe even a lot of security people don't understand. These guys, they got developers, they got call centers, they have people. It's unbelievable, and they're constantly tweaking it and getting better and better at it. And that's it. So you're going up against some pros. Show them some respect, no love, but respect that they're smart, at least for their smarts, not for their ethics. But so you got to take this stuff seriously and be careful. It's like you think you're safe, you're not safe. You're under attack.
Well, and it's funny that it's funny you're bringing that up, right? So one of the better social engineers in this world was Frank Abagnale. Abagnale? Did I say his name right? Abagnale. And he did all that.
Catch me if you can guy, right?
Yes. And he did all that. So it's funny, right? When we're talking about forged checks and we're talking about how he, social engineer people into cashing checks about $2.5 million. But then the guy ended up working for or with the FBI. And then he became this password or get rid of a password expert. So he knows about social engineering. He's done it. He's lived it. And his goal was to get rid of passwords. And whether you're considering biometrics, which is also hard, right? For many reasons, right? Whether we go back to the COVID times or we discussed that you don't want people to have your genetic information possibly because they can grab it. Biometrics is a good way to force the person to be in there. Or you can also think of these push apps that not only require you to accept the access, but asks you a number or a color or a dog. Consider it a push app with capture, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, well, I would say these days, the state of the art is basically two things. First will be with you absolutely need two-factor authentication for anything important, but also in particular for anything on the internet, anything that's exposed to the internet. You don't want to use a username and password anymore. I mean, if it's something trivial, if it's your New York Times account or something stupid like that, who cares? You got to protect things according to the threat. But for the stuff that's important, especially your bank, your email, because it's used to get other things and verify stuff. Your phone, really anything you're paying for, seriously paying for. Your Amazon or whatever other tail sites you use. You want to use two-factor, and really the state of the art, I think, these days. And people probably say, no, what about this, whatever. Well, it's my opinion. is, like you said, the push app where you get the app on your phone and it doesn't just say approve this, because there are ways around that. People just bomb you with approvals saying approve when you're in the middle of doing something. But, where there's a number and you got to say, does your screen say this number or enter the number or whatever. So you
So
need, that.
unless the threat actor is giving you the number on the other side, you're not going to know it, so you can't push it, right? And that's a good thing.
I mean, that's a good thing, and they're tied together in complicated cryptographic ways, but that's strong. So go for that if you can, and like Microsoft, probably a lot of people use Office 365. That's a really good thing to use. So that, but the other thing that I love, that is my favorite thing, my favorite type of authentication. I'm in security and I have one. Is a hardware token, a YubiKey or whatever else. I think those are great, and they're really hard to beat. Legend has it, I don't know if it's true, but legend has it that once Google started using them, they never had a successful phishing attack. I don't usually believe absolutes, but they're a good thing to use.
But
people, where you get a little thing, you got to plug it into your machine, or you got to hold it next to your phone, and it recognizes you, and that's got, again, strong cryptography and a mechanism where nothing can get in between you and there. They're hard to steal, and you're talking to the right place, and it's got to be you. It's pretty strong.
I want to bring up 2 points.
That is my current favorite. That's what I've been using.
And you brought up two, so I want to go back to the past, to something you said, and then I want to go forward to the future. So back to the past. Man. Yeah, well, I have a time machine. Hold on. Okay. So we're in the past. In the past, we're talking about, my Times account is not trivial, but here's where the issue is. The issue is somebody uses that password with their Times account. Again, I'm not saying Times doesn't have it, but they don't turn on multi-factor authentication. But then they use the same password with another site that has multi-factor authentication. So now the site that gets compromised has no MFA. They get the password, and then they use that password maybe on another site, and then exercise what we know as a 0 day, right? 0 days, everything has a 0 day. Everything has a 0 day. Whether you found it or not, everything has it. There's always a vulnerability somewhere.
Well, remember, too, it's like that gets back to, don't reuse your passwords, because, again, you think, oh, someone might get it. It's a little thing here. Not, industrial scale, and people have this stuff scripted and everything. They can, they figure that you have accounts, in a lot of places, and they say your email address. They're going to go log into a bunch of different places, and they're going to use every password, that they find that's associated with you, and they'll get a hit eventually. Be careful with that. But again, the real answer: get rid of passwords, or at least couple it, like with a security token. I love the security token. There are only 2 problems with them that I can see. The first is you don't want to lose it, so I just have 2. It's a little bit of a pain in the ass sometimes to set up both for an account, but you do that. The other thing is, though, there's not enough support for it. Like, so few sites support it. I just wish it was everywhere, and it's not, and that's really, really disappointing.
So few sites probably use it because the investment is enormous, and they know that majority of the people are not going to really use them. Let's be honest, right? Nobody says, I'm going out of my way to go buy a YubiKey or some kind of certificate, USB. And then the problem ends up being is, okay, I'm using it on my laptop, and I know they're capable of using them on the phones, the cell phones, but are people really going to plug it into their phone? And they're going to remember to take it from their laptop to their phone. Are they going to implement it that way? And then another point that you also brought up, some people, what they use is they use Microsoft Outlook or any of those desktop applications for calendars and emails, but they don't set up a separate password for that. So you need application passwords in addition to your other passwords to also manage and mitigate risk.
Oh yeah, well, you need multiple things. But, as far as the convenience of it goes, I mean, you know, they're not that inconvenient. I mean, to be honest, I mean, I walk around, like I say, you need a couple of them. You keep one on your keychain, so you got it with your keys when you go out. And you don't plug it into your phone. You get the kind that's like NFC, so it just, gets close and it works. I mean, that's, yeah, you got to pull your keys out of your pocket, but it's not a big deal. And you keep a spare on your desk too. I
So
mean,
Joe, you're OG.
in a safe place. Yeah, well,
I'll tell
yeah,
you why you're OG. I'll tell you why you're OG.
I know you're right, and I spent
No,
money
no,
on
no,
this.
no, no, no,
People are
no.
not
I'll
going
tell
to
you
go
why you're
out and
OG.
spend it.
I don't have
Yeah.
keys anymore. There's no keys to my house. I have.
That's right. You got that crazy home. Well, I don't go for that stuff. But
I
we got
have.
to do something on that.
So I don't have a keychain except for the car. And then actually, I put my fob in a Faraday pouch because I know that these people are walking around the neighborhoods and shooting little, parabolic mics into the houses to replay the signals on the cars and take the cars. So I have a Faraday pouch for that. But again, I don't have keys, and I think keys are also a vulnerability, physical keys as well. I mean, anybody can hack a lock, and can somebody guess a password to my door? Yes, but my cameras and my other intrusion hopefully will catch them. Again, we mitigate risk. We don't prevent things from happening. We mitigate them. So you can carry your UB keychain because I don't have one. But you know what? I could probably slip it into my wallet, right? They have those thin ones too that slip into the
I
wallet.
I was going to say, if you don't have keys, you can just put it in your pocket too. That works.
That works. Yeah. But that allowed me to get into
really
that.
Old school.
Yeah, I wanted to OG you, which I did, and I felt better about it. Even though we're very, very close in age, I'm just going to OG you.
You know what? My car doesn't even start with a button. You got to turn the key. That's how OG I am.
When it's talk OG, I have to get into the front of the car and then turn the crank. I made that up.
Yeah. Do you walk in front of it with a red lantern or something?
I can go even more OG than that. I can say I use my password manager on my YubiKey while it being pulled in a horse-drawn carriage.
Yeah. Well, you are correct. For personal use, there is a little bit of overhead with it. I kind of think that's why people have gone to the phones with the push apps, because the phone you already have it. You don't have to buy anything. Well, it's pretty easy to manage. So I mean, if that's the best you can do, it's better. It's better than texting, and certainly don't use just the password. But basically, do everything you can to get rid of passwords, or at least to not use just the password.
So
something that is my message.
So you brought up a good point here, right? The phones. There's two flavors of phones. You're either an iPhone or Apple person, or you're probably an Android person. If you have other phones, oh my God, I don't even want to get into that. But let's say you are.
I got an old Windows phone in my drawer.
Yeah, okay. I have remember the iPacs and all those other phones. I don't know if you remember those.
What?
The iPacs. It was HP, and then it was bought whatever.
Like IPAQ.
Yeah, iPacs. Yeah.
I think I might have had one of those.
That's what I'm using today with the
That's what you're using.
No, I'm kidding. So I'm not an iPhone person, but I'm always amazed. And this is another topic for a conversation on another podcast. But if you have a well-known password or PIN or something on your iPhone, the chances of anybody getting into it, unless they're contacting the Israelis or getting so bright to hack that, or find a way to compromise it, it's very hard. So I'll give credit to Apple and say their phones are pretty secure for most human beings. You really need heavy duty equipment to get into most of them, or you just need to know their password, right? So I'm really impressed how well structured those phones are, and it's a good thing, right? And it's a bad thing, right? And I don't want to get into the philosophical discussions of, if a terrorist uses a phone, should you have their password or access to their accounts? That's another whole podcast.
Well, look, here's another reason why passwords suck. You mentioned the phones, and yeah, phone security and all that, and iPhone and Android. That's a whole other subject, and how secure each of them is. But there was an article a couple of weeks ago, pretty recently, in the Wall Street Journal. I think it was the Wall Street Journal. Maybe it was the Times. I don't know. About how people were breaking into phones, and the easiest way they were breaking in was, I think they were just watching people put in their PIN, just watching them, and then then grabbing the phone, whatever, picking their pocket or whatever, and then being able to get in like that. And you know what? That is like the oldest school thing in the world. Just looking over someone's shoulder, to get their password or whatever. I mean, that's from like 30 plus years ago.
So that's
And
back
it's
in,
just
yeah.
amazing. You see, that is not the sin, the I don't know, the lingering, festering evil of passwords that on these super advanced, super secure devices, we put a password on them and they're still subject to a 20, 30-year-old attack. It's just insane. Don't do it. Use the biometrics, for God's sake. At least you got to get, drunk and have someone stick your finger on the thing, or put it in your face or something to unlock it.
So I think about 15
Passwords.
years ago. Yeah, and it's funny you bring that up, right? 15 years ago, when I did the CISSP test, might even been longer. Yeah, I guess I'm OG. And they were talking about, now it's called Van Eck freaking, or basically looking at the emanations of the signals coming from a CRT. And there's so many supposedly these tricks and techniques of listening or watching signals emanate. Like if you're pushing your buttons on your phone, there might be oscillating tones that you can hear from a distance and know. I'm not talking about DTMF. I'm talking about you push a button and
Yeah,
now
yeah,
it's creating these waves that you can see from a distance and like, oh, that was a 4, that was a 3, that was a 7. But yeah, people are doing that. Even in ATMs at banks, people are putting in like hidden cameras and they see they hope to see your card number and they hope to see your numbers. But thankfully, we have more sophisticated cards today that have smart cards with certificates. I know they called it MyFair for the access cards to buildings, but if the person gets a hold of the card and then sees your PIN number, or they wait for you outside after they've gotten the PIN, they can just walk right into the ATM and take money. I mean, they can also put a gun to you and say, "Give me your money," and put your card in. But
well, that's my favorite cryptographic attack.
yeah,
Remember Schneier's book? What was it? Applied Cryptography. I think
yeah,
he called that the rubber hose attack or something.
yeah. But what I'm getting at is that there's so many ways to circumvent and socially engineer and use like these old school attacks. Oh, you see the PIN number? Okay, maybe I can get the person's card, when they walk out of the ATM and they walk back in and now they have their PIN. They don't have to even give it to me. I don't have to even threaten them. I just take the card from them. Well, I guess you're threatening them if you're taking the card from them, but you don't have to even worry about getting the PIN. You just saw it on a hidden camera that was placed on the wall behind there as a fake security camera.
No, it's true. I mean, look, there's a way around everything. I guess a lot of the messages, yeah, there are these things that can be done. You got to be careful. You need to understand what you're using, understand what the threats are, and for God's sake, at least don't make it easy. The bad guys. Using passwords, frankly, is making it easy. Using bad passwords or reusing passwords or writing them on a spreadsheet, that's making it extremely easy. At least make it harder.
Well, you mean when people connect an external keyboard and they go to Hack 5 and they put that in between the keyboard and the computer and you don't have any USB detection for your endpoints and it doesn't know that somebody put something in between? Oh, yeah.
Well, look, I mean, you got to be realistic about the threats too. Like that, you know, sitting here in my office, I'm not tremendously worried about that. I wish I was important enough that someone would be sneaking in or that I had a house full of servants, I got to worry about. So I don't worry about that so much here. When you're traveling, going to a hotel, that's a different story. Then maybe you should be thinking about it a little bit.
Cool.
Cool. All right. So we have spent a bunch of time trashing passwords. I hope we have helped all of you hate them as much as we do, and give you some tips on how to deal with them. We'll probably have some more rants. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So, Adam, last call here at the cocktail hour. Any other thoughts?
I have no other thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts, but I don't think you want me to rant on for another 2 hours.
Yeah, maybe we can do an extended session one day of just, a continual rant. But for now, yeah, that's it. This is a big topic. You could talk about this for days, and then you'd really want to start drinking till you pass out. But for now, I think that's all we got.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to our next podcast.
That's right. All right. We'll see you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.